In the world of military precision, where millimeters mean the difference between life and death, records are written in blood, sweat, and unwavering focus. For decades, the longest confirmed sniper kill stood as an almost mythical achievement, a shot so impossible that even seasoned marksmen would shake their heads in disbelief. But on a dusty mountain ridge in Afghanistan, a quiet soldier with steady hands and an unbreakable spirit was about to rewrite history with a single pull of the trigger. What happened next would challenge everything the military thought they knew about human capability, courage, and the true meaning of precision under pressure. Elena Vasquez had always been different from other girls growing up in the small farming town of Cedar Falls, Texas. While her classmates spent weekends at shopping malls and sleepovers, Elena could be found at her grandfather's ranch, learning to shoot tin cans off fence posts with an old Winchester rifle. Her grandfather, Miguel, was a former Marine who had served in Vietnam, and he recognized something special in his granddaughter's steady hands and patient temperament. "Mija," he would say, watching as she consistently hit targets that grown men struggled with, "you have the gift." But a gift without discipline is just luck waiting to run out. Throughout high school, she excelled not just in marksmanship but in mathematics and physics, understanding instinctively how wind speed, bullet drop, and atmospheric pressure affected trajectory. Her teachers were amazed by her ability to calculate complex equations in her head, but Elena knew these weren't just academic exercises. They were tools that could save lives. When she turned 18, Elena made a decision that surprised no one who truly knew her. She enlisted in the army, specifically requesting infantry with the hope of eventually qualifying for sniper training. The recruiter, Sergeant Morrison, looked at the petite young woman sitting across from his desk and tried to hide his skepticism. "Ma'am, with respect, sniper school is one of the most demanding programs we offer. The physical requirements alone." "I can carry my weight and more," Elena interrupted politely but firmly. "I've been doing ranch work since I was 10 and I've never missed a shot when it counted." Basic training at Fort Benning was everything Elena expected and more. The drill sergeants tried to break her, as they did every recruit, but Elena had learned resilience from years of ranch work and her grandfather's tough love. When other recruits complained about the heat, the long marches, or the constant pressure, Elena remained focused on her goal. She scored expert marksman on every weapons qualification and consistently ranked at the top of her class in physical fitness.
It was during advanced infantry training that Elena caught the attention of Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, a former sniper instructor who was observing training exercises.
During a particularly challenging long-range shooting drill, Elena consistently hit targets at 800 meters, while lying prone in challenging wind conditions. Other soldiers were struggling to hit targets at 400 meters. "Vasquez," Rodriguez called out after the exercise. "Walk with me." As they moved away from the other soldiers, Rodriguez studied Elena carefully. "I've been watching you for 3 weeks. Your shooting is exceptional, but that's not what interests me most. You don't get rattled. When Jackson was having a meltdown during the night navigation exercise, you calmly took charge and got your squad through the course. When Thompson twisted his ankle during the ruck march, you redistributed his gear without complaint and still finished in the top 5. Elena listened quietly, unsure where the conversation was heading. "I think you might have what it takes for sniper school," Rodriguez continued. "But I need to be honest with you. It's not just about shooting. Snipers operate in small teams, often behind enemy lines, sometimes for days or weeks at a time. The psychological pressure is enormous. You'll be responsible for making split-second decisions that affect the lives of your fellow soldiers. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility?"
Without hesitation, Elena nodded.
"Sergeant, I've been preparing for this my whole life. My grandfather taught me that with great ability comes great responsibility. If I have the skills to protect our soldiers and complete the mission, then it's my duty to use them." The application process for sniper school was rigorous. Elena underwent extensive background checks, psychological evaluations, and additional physical fitness tests. She scored in the 99th percentile on the marksmanship assessment and impressed the psychologist with her emotional stability and decision-making abilities under stress. Sniper school at Fort Benning was a revelation. Elena found herself among 24 carefully selected soldiers, all exceptional marksmen, all driven to excel. The course was designed to push students to their absolute limits and beyond. Days began at 0400 hours and often didn't end until after midnight. Students learned advanced ballistics, weather reading, camouflage techniques, stalking, observation, and most importantly, patience. The instructors, led by Master Sergeant Williams, were legendary figures in the sniper community. Williams had multiple confirmed kills from deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, and was known for his ability to spot potential in unlikely candidates while weeding out those who lacked the mental fortitude required. Snipers, Williams would tell the class, are not just shooters. You are intelligence gatherers, force multipliers, and sometimes the last line of defense for your brothers and sisters in arms. Every shot you take has consequences that ripple far beyond the immediate target. You must be absolutely certain of your target identification, your shot placement, and your ability to live with the decisions you make. Elena absorbed every lesson, every technique, every piece of wisdom the instructors shared. During stalking exercises where students had to move undetected across open terrain to reach observation positions, Elena drew on her grandfather's teachings about reading the land and moving like her grandmother's cat, silent and purposeful. The psychological challenges were perhaps more difficult than the physical ones. During one particularly intense exercise, students were placed in simulated combat scenarios where they had to make instantaneous decisions about whether to engage targets. Some scenarios involved clear enemy combatants, but others presented moral gray areas. Civilians potentially being used as human shields or targets whose identification was ambiguous. Elena struggled with one particular scenario where she was presented with a target wearing civilian clothes but carrying what appeared to be a weapon near a school. The exercise required her to make a decision within 30 seconds. She chose not to engage, citing insufficient target identification and the proximity to civilian structures. The instructors debriefed her decision extensively, challenging her reasoning and forcing her to articulate exactly why she made that choice. In real combat, Williams told her, hesitation can get you and your teammates killed, but taking the wrong shot can haunt you for the rest of your life and potentially create more enemies than it eliminates. Your decision was correct, but I need to know you can make it confidently and quickly when lives are on the line. The shooting portion of the course was where Elena truly excelled. Starting with known distance targets at 300, 500, and 800 meters, she consistently achieved first-round hits. As the course progressed to unknown distance targets and challenging environmental conditions, Elena's performance only improved. She seemed to have an intuitive understanding of how environmental factors affected bullet trajectory. During one memorable exercise conducted in heavy wind and rain, Elena made a shot at 12,200 meters that impressed even the instructors. The target was barely visible through the weather, and wind conditions were constantly changing. Elena spent nearly 20 minutes studying the conditions, watching grass movement, and feeling the wind patterns on her face before taking the shot. The bullet found its mark with devastating precision. "How did you calculate that wind call?" Instructor Sergeant Martinez asked afterward. "I didn't calculate it exactly," Elena replied honestly. "I watched the patterns, felt how the wind was moving at different levels, and trusted my instincts. My grandfather taught me that sometimes you have to feel the shot as much as calculate it." Martinez nodded approvingly. That's the difference between a marksman and a sniper. Marksmen rely on perfect conditions and exact calculations. Snipers adapt to whatever conditions they're given and find a way to make the shot when it matters. The final phase of sniper school combined all elements, shooting, stalking, observation, and decision-making, into comprehensive field exercises. Elena was paired with Tommy Chen, a former college mathematics student from California who had also shown exceptional promise. Chen would serve as her spotter, responsible for range estimation, wind calculation, and target identification support. Their partnership clicked immediately. Chen's analytical mind complemented Elena's intuitive shooting ability perfectly. During their final exercise, they were tasked with conducting a simulated mission that required them to infiltrate an area undetected, establish an observation post, gather intelligence for 48 hours, and then engage specific targets when the opportunity presented itself. The exercise took place in the hills of Georgia, with instructor Cadre playing the role of enemy forces. Elena and Chen moved into position, under cover of darkness, traveling nearly 8 kilometers through rough terrain while carrying full packs and equipment. They established their hide site in a cluster of rocks overlooking the target area and began their observation period. For 2 days, they watched the simulated enemy compound, noting patrol patterns, identifying key personnel, and documenting activities. On the second evening, their target, a role player designated as a high-value enemy commander, appeared at a window 1,400 meters from their position. Elena studied the shot carefully. The target was visible for only a few seconds at a time, and the window was partially obscured by vegetation. Wind conditions were tricky, with thermal currents rising from the valley below creating unpredictable air movement. "I can make the shot," Elena whispered to Chen, "but we'll only get one chance. If I miss, They'll know we're here. Chen quickly calculated the range, elevation, and estimated wind conditions. 1,400 meters, target moving left to right, wind variable but primarily from the southeast at approximately 8 miles per hour. You'll need to lead the target by about 18 inches and account for the rising thermals. Elena adjusted her scope and controlled her breathing. She had made shots at this distance before, but never under these exact conditions. The target appeared in the window again, paused for a moment, and began to move. Elena tracked the movement, found her natural respiratory pause, and gently pressed the trigger. The shot was perfect. The simulation blank found its mark, and the role player immediately signaled a hit. Elena and Chen had successfully completed their mission without detection. When they returned to base, Williams was waiting for them with a rare smile on his usually stern face. "Outstanding work, both of you," he said. "Vasquez, that was one of the finest shots I've seen in 15 years of running this course. You showed patience, precision, and excellent judgment. Chen, your support was textbook perfect. You two are going to make an excellent sniper team." Elena graduated sniper school ranked second in her class, earning the coveted sniper badge and the respect of instructors who had initially wondered if she could handle the pressure. More importantly, she had found her calling and her partner in Chen, who had also excelled throughout the course. Their first deployment came 6 months later. Elena and Chen were assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division and received orders for Afghanistan. As they prepared for deployment, Elena called her grandfather to share the news. "Mija." Miguel's voice was filled with pride and concern. "You've achieved something remarkable. But remember what I always told you. The real test isn't in training. It's when lives depend on your decisions and your shot. Trust your training, trust your partner, and trust yourself. And always remember that coming home is more important than any mission." As Elena packed her equipment for deployment, she carefully wrapped the small silver cross her grandfather had given her when she enlisted. She had carried it through basic training, infantry school, and sniper training. Now it would go with her to Afghanistan, where her skills would face their ultimate test in the harsh realities of combat. The young woman who had learned to shoot tin cans on a Texas ranch was about to embark on a journey that would test every skill she had learned, every value she held dear, and ultimately lead to a moment that would change her life and military history forever. The helicopter blades chopped through the thin mountain air as Elena's transport approached Forward Operating Base Chapman in Afghanistan's Paktia province. Below, the landscape stretched endlessly. Jagged peaks, deep valleys, and patches of green that marked the few areas where life could flourish in this harsh environment. Elena pressed her face to the small window, studying the terrain that would become her workplace for the next 15 months. Beside her, Tommy Chen reviewed their mission briefings for the 3rd time, his methodical nature ensuring they were prepared for whatever awaited them. The other soldiers on the transport were a mix of new arrivals and veterans returning from leave, but Elena noticed how the experienced troops carried themselves differently, alert, watchful, and with a wariness that came from seeing too much. FOB Chapman was a study in organized chaos. Blast walls, razor wire, and guard towers created a fortress mentality, while inside, soldiers went about their daily routines with practiced efficiency. Elena and Chen were assigned to Alpha Company, 2nd Battalion, under the command of Captain David Rodriguez, a career infantry officer who had already completed 2 previous deployments. "Welcome to paradise," Rodriguez said dryly as he briefed the new arrivals. "This sector has been relatively quiet lately, which in Afghanistan means we're averaging only 1 contact per week instead of daily firefights. Your job as our sniper team is to provide overwatch during patrols, intelligence gathering, and when necessary, precise elimination of high-value targets." Elena and Chen quickly established themselves in the routine of deployment life. Their days began before dawn with intelligence briefings, equipment checks, and preparation for whatever mission lay ahead. Sometimes they provided overwatch for convoy operations, positioning themselves on ridgelines to scan for threats. Other times they accompanied infantry patrols through villages, their trained eyes watching for suspicious activity or signs of improvised explosive devices. The first month passed without Elena firing a shot in anger, though she had several opportunities to observe the complex dynamics of the Afghan conflict. During village patrols, she watched children play in the streets while their parents eyed the American soldiers with mixtures of curiosity, wariness, and resignation. She saw the delicate balance between winning hearts and minds while remaining constantly vigilant for threats. It was during their 5th week in country that Elena and Chen received their first major assignment. Intelligence indicated that a high-value target, an insurgent commander known as the Engineer, for his expertise in building sophisticated improvised explosive devices, would be meeting with local cell leaders in a compound 15 kilometers from the base. Captain Rodriguez called Elena and Chen into his office for the mission briefing. This guy has been responsible for at least 12 IED attacks in the last 6 months, including the one that killed Sergeant Thompson's squad, he explained, pointing to aerial photographs of the target compound. We've been tracking him for weeks, and this is our best opportunity to take him out. The compound sat on a hillside overlooking a valley, surrounded by agricultural fields and small villages. The nearest suitable overwatch position was a ridgeline, approximately 1,800 meters away. A challenging shot, but within her capabilities. What's the collateral damage assessment? Chen asked, his analytical mind already calculating the mission parameters. Minimal civilian presence expected, Rodriguez replied. Intel suggests the meeting will take place at night when the compound is largely empty except for the targets and security personnel. Your rules of engagement are clear. Positive identification required, minimize collateral damage, and you have authorization to engage the primary target and any armed hostiles. Elena felt a familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension. This would be her first combat engagement, the moment when all her training would be put to the ultimate test. She thought of her grandfather's words about responsibility and the weight of decision-making that came with her role. That evening, Elena and Chen prepared their equipment with meticulous care. Elena's rifle, a customized M24 sniper weapon system, had been zeroed and re-zeroed countless times until she knew its characteristics as well as her own heartbeat. Chen packed his spotting scope, range-finding equipment, and ballistic computer, along with detailed maps of the area and weather forecast information. They departed the base at 0200 hours as part of a larger operation. While the main infantry element moved to establish blocking positions around the target area, Elena and Chen were inserted by helicopter at a landing zone 6 kilometers from their intended overwatch position. From there, they would have to move cross-country in darkness to reach their hide site before dawn. The movement was everything Elena had trained for, but had never experienced under combat conditions. Every shadow could conceal an enemy fighter. Every sound could signal discovery. Chen led the way with night vision equipment while Elena followed, both moving with the deliberate silence they had practiced countless times in training. The terrain was even more challenging than the aerial photographs had suggested. Steep rocky slopes, loose scree, and occasional patches of thorn bushes made progress slow and treacherous. After 3 hours of careful movement, they reached their planned position just as the eastern sky began to lighten with the approach of dawn. Elena was amazed by the view from their hide site. The entire valley spread out below them, with the target compound clearly visible in the distance. Chen immediately began calculating ranges and environmental factors, while Elena established her shooting position and studied the target area through her scope. 1,840 meters to the main building, Chen whispered, reading from his laser rangefinder. Wind is variable, mostly from the northwest at 6 to 8 miles per hour. But there are thermal currents rising from the valley that could affect bullet trajectory. Elena settled into her shooting position and began the process of studying the target area. Through her scope, she could see the compound coming to life as the day progressed. Children played in the courtyard, women hung laundry on lines, and men moved about their daily activities. Elena was struck by how normal it all looked, a reminder that even in a war zone, life continued its rhythms. As the day wore on, Elena and Chen maintained their surveillance while staying hidden among the rocks of the ridgeline. They took turns resting while the other maintained watch, sharing water and high-energy snacks while tracking movement patterns in the compound below. The first sign that something was different came in the late afternoon when several vehicles arrived at the compound. Elena watched through her scope as armed men took positions around the perimeter, while other figures moved into the main building. She could see muzzle flashes of weapons and the distinctive outlines of military-style equipment. Multiple military-age males with weapons, Elena reported quietly into her radio. Looks like security is being established for tonight's meeting. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled back through their encrypted radio. Roger. Continue surveillance and report any positive identification of the primary target. As darkness fell, the compound took on a different character. Most of the civilian activity ceased and the armed security personnel became more prominent. Elena switched to her thermal imaging scope, which allowed her to see heat signatures even in complete darkness. At 21:30 hours, a new vehicle arrived at the compound. Elena watched as several figures exited the vehicle and moved into the main building. One of them matched the physical description they had been given for the engineer. Medium height, distinctive limp from an old injury, and wearing traditional Afghan clothing. I have eyes on a possible match for the primary target, Elena whispered to Chen, who immediately began confirming the identification using his own optics. Confirmed, Chen replied after several minutes of observation. Physical characteristics match, and he appears to be directing the other personnel. That's our target. Elena felt her heart rate increase slightly as she prepared for what might be her first combat shot. She checked her scope settings, controlled her breathing, and waited for the optimal opportunity. The target was currently inside the building, occasionally visible through windows. But Elena needed a clear shot with minimal risk of collateral damage. The opportunity came at 22:47 hours. The target emerged from the building and moved to a position in the courtyard where he was clearly separated from other personnel. Elena could see him through her thermal scope standing in what appeared to be an animated conversation with two other figures. I have a clear shot, Elena reported. Target is isolated, approximately 1,850 meters, slight crosswind from the northwest. You are cleared to engage, came Rodriguez's immediate response. Elena made her final calculations, adjusting for the range, wind conditions, and the slight downward angle of the shot. She found her natural respiratory pause, placed the crosshairs on the target's center mass, and began to apply steady pressure to the trigger. In that moment, Elena thought of her grandfather's teachings about responsibility and the weight of taking a life. She thought of Sergeant Thompson and his squad, killed by the improvised explosive devices this man had created. She thought of the American and Afghan soldiers who would be safer with this threat eliminated. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder with its familiar authority. Through her scope, Elena watched as the target collapsed immediately. She had made a clean hit, and the engineers' war against coalition forces was over. Target down, Elena reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. The aftermath was swift and decisive. The other personnel in the compound scattered, some returning fire in the general direction of Elena's position, but without accurate target identification. Within minutes, the infantry elements moved in to secure the compound and confirm the elimination of the target. Elena and Chen maintained their overwatch position throughout the operation, ready to provide additional support if needed. When the all-clear was given several hours later, they began their careful movement back to the extraction point. During the helicopter ride back to base, Elena reflected on what had just happened. She had taken her first life in combat, eliminated a threat that had been responsible for the deaths of American soldiers. She felt no joy in the act. But neither did she feel regret. It had been a necessary action, executed with precision and professionalism. Back at FOB Chapman, Captain Rodriguez debriefed the mission personally. Outstanding work, he told Elena and Chen. Clean shot, positive target identification, and flawless execution. That was textbook sniper work under combat conditions. Elena's reputation within the unit grew quickly after that first mission. Over the following months, she and Chen conducted dozens of operations, some resulting in engagements, others purely intelligence-gathering missions. Elena's shooting skills became legendary within the battalion, but it was her judgment and professionalism that truly impressed the leadership. During one particularly challenging mission, Elena had to make a decision that demonstrated her maturity and understanding of the complex nature of counterinsurgency warfare. She had a clear shot on an insurgent leader who was meeting with village elders, but the risk of civilian casualties was significant. Despite pressure from higher command to take the shot, Elena held her fire, citing the potential for civilian casualties and the negative impact on local relations. The target escaped that night, but Elena's decision was later vindicated when intelligence revealed that several of the village elders were actually civilians who had been coerced into attending the meeting. As her deployment progressed, Elena found herself mentoring newer soldiers and sharing the lessons she had learned. She taught them that being a sniper was about much more than just shooting. It required patience, judgment, and an understanding of the broader strategic implications of every action. The pivotal moment that would define Elena's career and earn her a place in military history was still months away. But the foundation was being built with every mission, every shot, and every decision. She was becoming not just a skilled marksman, but a complete sniper. A soldier who understood that precision applied to much more than just her shooting. As Elena wrote in a letter to her grandfather during her 8th month in country, "The shooting is the easy part, abuelo. It's everything else. The decisions, the responsibility, the weight of it all that makes this job truly challenging. But I'm ready for whatever comes next." What came next would test every skill Elena had developed and push her abilities to their absolute limits in a way that no training exercise could have prepared her for. The mission briefing on that crisp October morning seemed routine enough, but Elena sensed something different in Captain Rodriguez's demeanor. 10 months into her deployment, she had developed an intuition about operations, and this one felt significant. We have actionable intelligence on a high-value target. Rodriguez began, pointing to satellite imagery displayed on the briefing room screen. Jamal al-Rashid, also known as the Ghost, has been coordinating attacks across 3 provinces. This guy is responsible for more than 50 coalition casualties, including the roadside bomb that killed Lieutenant Morrison's entire squad last month. Eleanor studied the terrain displayed on the screen. The target area was in the mountains near the Pakistani border. Rough country with limited access routes and perfect hiding spots for insurgent forces. The closest friendly position was a small observation post, designated OP Falcon, established on a peak that provided excellent visibility across multiple valleys. What makes this different from our usual operations? Chen asked, already analyzing the tactical challenges presented by the mountainous terrain. Rodriguez's expression grew serious. Al-Rashid has been impossible to pin down because he moves constantly and never stays in one place for more than a few hours. Our intelligence indicates he'll be conducting a meeting with regional cell leaders at a compound in the Wazi Valley. The problem is the only suitable overwatch position for this target is from OP Falcon, which puts the shot at approximately 3,000 meters. Elena felt her breath catch slightly. 3,000 meters was well beyond the normal engagement range for her M24 rifle system. The current world record for a confirmed sniper kill was 2,430 meters, achieved by a Canadian sniper in Iraq. What Rodriguez was suggesting pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible with current technology and environmental conditions. Sir, Elena said carefully, that's an extremely challenging shot. Beyond the range limitations of our current system, the environmental factors at that distance become exponentially more complicated. Wind drift, bullet drop, atmospheric pressure variations. Any small miscalculation could mean missing by several meters. Rodriguez nodded. I understand the challenges, Vasquez, but intel suggests this might be our only chance at al-Rashid for months. He's planning something big, possibly a coordinated attack on multiple coalition bases. If we can eliminate him now, we could save dozens of American lives. Elena looked at Chen, who was already running calculations on his tablet computer. After several minutes, he looked up with a grim expression. Theoretically possible, but extremely difficult, he reported. At 3,000 meters with standard 7.62 ammunition, we're looking at nearly 8 seconds of flight time, approximately 15 meters of bullet drop, and wind drift that could vary dramatically across that distance. We'd need perfect conditions and flawless execution. Captain Rodriguez pulled Elena aside after the briefing. I need you to be completely honest with me, he said quietly. Can you make this shot? I'm not asking if it's theoretically possible. I'm asking if Elena Vasquez, with your skills and experience, can put a bullet on target at 3,000 meters when it matters. Elena considered the question carefully. Everything in her training told her that shots at that distance were more luck than skill, that too many variables came into play for any sniper to be truly confident. But she also thought about Lieutenant Morrison and his squad, about the soldiers who might die if al-Rashid's planned attack succeeded, and about the responsibility that came with her unique abilities. Give me 24 hours to study the conditions and prepare, Elena finally replied. If the environmental factors align properly, I believe I can make the shot. The next 24 hours were the most intense preparation period of Elena's military career. She and Chen studied satellite imagery, weather forecasts, and ballistic calculations until they could recite every detail from memory. They consulted with the unit's forward observer, who provided detailed atmospheric data for the target area. Elena even called her grandfather, using the base's morale phone to seek his wisdom. Mija. Miguel's voice was calm and reassuring despite the poor satellite connection. You've been preparing for this moment your entire life. Trust your training, but more importantly, trust your instincts. The calculations will get you close, but feeling the shot is what will put you on target. Elena spent hours on the range pushing her equipment to its maximum capabilities and fine-tuning her Zero at extended ranges. She discovered that her rifle performed best with match-grade ammunition and a specific scope setting that compensated for the extreme distance. Chen worked alongside her, developing firing solutions for various environmental scenarios they might encounter. The morning of the operation arrived with perfect weather conditions, clear skies, minimal wind, and stable atmospheric pressure. As Elena and Chen prepared their equipment, she felt the familiar pre-mission mixture of nervousness and excitement, but something else as well, a sense of destiny. As if this moment had been inevitable. The helicopter insertion to OP Falcon went smoothly, though Elena was struck by the isolation of the position. The observation post sat on a rocky peak at 8,500 feet elevation, manned by a squad of infantry soldiers who had been watching the valley approaches for weeks. Sergeant First Class Johnson, the post commander, briefed Elena and Chen on local conditions and recent enemy activity. "We've been seeing movement in the target compound for 2 days," Johnson reported. "Definitely increased security and what looks like preparation for something significant. Your target is supposed to arrive sometime this afternoon." Elena established her firing position on the northern edge of the post, where she had a clear field of view across the Wazi Valley. Through her scope, she could see the target compound nestled against the far mountainside, a cluster of low buildings surrounded by terraced fields and scattered trees. The distance marker on her laser rangefinder confirmed what the maps had indicated: 3,247 meters to the primary building. Chen set up his spotting equipment adjacent to Elena's position and began the painstaking process of reading environmental conditions at multiple points between their position and the target. Wind was perhaps the most critical factor. At that distance, even a slight variation could throw the bullet off target by several meters. "Wind is variable but manageable," Chen reported after an hour of observation, "predominantly from the northwest at 6 to 10 miles per hour, with thermal currents rising from the valley floor. The biggest challenge will be the crosswind about halfway to the target, where it funnels through that saddle between peaks." Elena spent the afternoon studying the target compound through her scope, learning the rhythm of activity and identifying potential shooting positions. She practiced her breathing techniques and visualization exercises, mentally rehearsing the shot sequence dozens of times. At 15:47 hours, their radio crackled with an update from higher command. "Falcon, this is Overwatch. Intelligence confirms target is en route to your sector. Estimated arrival at your location within 30 minutes. Elena felt her heart rate increase slightly, but her hands remained steady as she made final adjustments to her scope and reviewed her firing solution one more time. Chen was monitoring multiple radio frequencies, coordinating with aerial surveillance assets that were tracking the target's movement. "Visual confirmation of target vehicle approaching the compound," Chen announced, peering through his spotting scope. 3 vehicles in convoy, security element deploying around the perimeter. Elena tracked the vehicles through her scope as they approached the compound. When the convoy stopped and personnel began dismounting, she studied each figure carefully, comparing them to the detailed photographs she had memorized during her mission preparation. "Third vehicle, passenger side," Chen called out. "Medium height, distinctive beard pattern, moving with a slight limp on the left side. Physical characteristics matched the target profile." Elena found the figure in her scope and confirmed Chen's identification. Al-Rashid was exactly as intelligence had described, a man in his 40s with graying beard and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to command. He was surrounded by bodyguards but moved with purpose toward the main building of the compound. "Confirmed positive identification of primary target," Elena reported over the radio. "Standing by for firing solution." The next several minutes were critical as Elena and Chen worked together to develop the most accurate firing solution possible. Chen monitored wind conditions at multiple points, atmospheric pressure, and temperature variations that could affect bullet trajectory. Elena made minute adjustments to her scope and confirmed her 0-1 final time. "Range 32-47 meters, Chen called out. "Wind northwest at 8 miles per hour, with gusting to 12, thermal updraft from valley floor approximately 2 miles per hour, temperature 71 degrees, barometric pressure 24.87 inches. Recommended elevation adjustment 12.3 mils up, windage adjustment 2.7 mils left." Elena made the adjustments carefully, double-checking each setting before settling into her final shooting position. Through her scope, she could see Al-Rashid had entered the main building but was visible through a large window where he appeared to be conducting a meeting. "Target is visible and stationary," Elena reported. "Clear shot available with minimal collateral damage risk." "You are clear to engage," came the immediate response from Captain Rodriguez. Elena controlled her breathing and found her natural respiratory pause. At this distance, the shot would take nearly 8 seconds to reach the target, an eternity in tactical terms. She would have to predict not just where the target was, but where he would be when the bullet arrived. Through her scope, Elena watched Al-Rashid move to the window and pause there, apparently looking out across the valley. It was the perfect opportunity. He was stationary, clearly separated from other personnel, and backlit by the interior lighting of the building. Elena placed her crosshairs on the target's center mass and began her final trigger press. In that moment, she thought of Lieutenant Morrison and his soldiers, of her grandfather's teachings about responsibility, and of all the training that had brought her to this moment. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with its familiar recoil, but Elena immediately returned to her scope to observe the shot. For 8 long seconds she tracked the target while the bullet traveled its trajectory through the thin mountain air. The impact was devastating and immediate. Through her scope, Elena watched as al-Rashid collapsed, the precision shot finding its mark exactly as she had calculated. The meeting erupted in chaos as other personnel realized what had happened. But al-Rashid lay motionless. "Target down," Elena reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she had just accomplished. The aftermath was surreal. Chen confirmed the hit with his spotting scope, while aerial surveillance assets moved in to assess the situation. Within minutes, Signals Intelligence confirmed that enemy radio traffic was reporting the death of their regional commander. Sergeant Johnson approached Elena's position with an expression of amazement. "Did you just make a kill shot at over 3,000 meters?" he asked incredulously. Elena was reloading her rifle and preparing for potential follow-up shots when she answered quietly, 3,247 meters, according to our rangefinder. The significance of that number began to sink in as Chen double-checked their measurements. Elena had not just eliminated a high-value target, she had broken the world record for longest confirmed sniper kill by more than 800 meters, a feat that many in the military community had considered impossible with current technology. Word of the shot spread quickly through military channels. Within hours, Colonel Harrison, the battalion commander, was on the radio requesting detailed documentation of the engagement. Ballistics experts and military historians began analyzing the shot to verify its accuracy and circumstances. The verification process was exhaustive. Elena and Chen provided detailed accounts of their preparation, environmental conditions, and execution of the shot. The laser rangefinder data was downloaded and analyzed, atmospheric conditions were confirmed through weather station records, and the rifle and ammunition were tested to verify their specifications. When the verification was complete, the results were undeniable. Elena Vasquez had achieved a confirmed kill at 3,247 meters under combat conditions, shattering the previous world record and demonstrating a level of marksmanship that redefined what was considered possible in military operations. But for Elena, the record itself was less important than the mission success. Al-Rashid's death disrupted planned attacks on coalition forces and likely saved dozens of American lives. The man responsible for so many deaths would never again threaten soldiers or civilians. Captain Rodriguez's voice over the radio captured the moment perfectly. "Falcon, this is Overwatch." Outstanding marksmanship. That shot just made military history. Elena's response was characteristically humble. "Just doing my job, sir. Mission accomplished." As Elena and Chen prepared to leave OP Falcon the next morning, Sergeant Johnson shook her hand with obvious respect. "Ma'am, I've been in the Army for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did yesterday. That shot was impossible, but you made it look routine." Elena smiled and replied, "My grandfather always told me that impossible is just another word for difficult. You prepare as much as you can, trust your training, and when the moment comes, you take the shot." The helicopter ride back to FOB Chapman gave Elena time to reflect on what had happened. She had achieved something that would be remembered in military history, but more importantly, she had fulfilled the responsibility that came with her unique skills. The quiet girl from Texas who had learned to shoot tin cans on her grandfather's ranch had become a legend. When Elena finally called her grandfather to share the news, his response was everything she had hoped for. "Mija, I always knew you were destined for something special. You've honored our family and your uniform. But remember, no matter what records you set or how famous you become, you're still my granddaughter who learned to shoot because she wanted to protect others. That's what makes me most proud." Elena's record shot would be studied by military academies, analyzed by ballistics experts, and remembered by historians as a defining moment in the evolution of military marksmanship. But for Elena Vasquez, it would always be remembered as the moment when all her training, natural ability, and moral conviction came together to protect the soldiers who depended on her skills. The shot that broke the world record had also broken new ground in understanding the limits of human capability under combat conditions. Elena had proven that with proper preparation, exceptional skill, and unwavering determination, even the impossible could become routine. As she wrote in her final letter home before completing her deployment, "The record is just a number, abuelo. What matters is that good people are safer because of what we accomplished here. That's what I'll remember long after the statistics are forgotten." Elena Vasquez had entered the pages of military history with a single, perfectly placed shot that traveled 3,247 meters through mountain air to find its target. But her true legacy would be the lives saved and the standard of excellence she had established for future generations of military snipers who would train to match her extraordinary achievement.